Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I'm your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, also the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord, and the lead mod over at Reddit's famous r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, I'm a sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
Hello, Tim. How have you been?
I'm doing good. How are you, John?
I am doing really, really, really good myself. It's unseasonably warm still this winter here in New York. I think like 2 days ago it was like 60 degrees, which, it's February. That's not supposed to be the way it goes traditionally. I don't want to push my weather on anybody, but I'm pretty sure that's not the way it was supposed to be.
Well, you know what I think about when it gets too warm? I think about a nice cold drink.
Yeah. A nice little sake. Sometimes I like to have, when it gets particularly warm, like in February, I like to have my drinks on the rocks.
Ooh.
Yeah. I've always heard that sake doesn't necessarily get along with the rocks so much. It kind of, sake is more of something you have like a wine where you just have it pouring it directly in, just sipping straight ahead. But I have a feeling that, like many things with sake, there are exceptions to this.
Well, if anyone says sake cannot be put on the rocks, I say hogwash.
Hogwash. Oh my goodness.
Yes. So sake on the rocks, sake over ice.
Sake over ice.
Yes. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Excellent.
Yeah. Do you, at home, in your private time behind closed doors, do you pour your sake over ice?
Very rarely. It is it's something that we've done occasionally when we've had a sake in the house that really lent itself to that idea. But I think that our listeners at home are going to be wondering, like, what is a sake that lends itself to that idea?
Yeah. You know what this discussion makes me think of, whether it's okay to put sake on the rocks or not? It makes me think of the whole warm sake discussion. Some people think warm sake is bad. Some people think warm sake is good. Some people think both are okay. And it's the same type of discussion. I think people are looking for rules and guidelines when it comes to this type of question. And my point of view is that sake on the rocks, sake over ice is fantastic with exactly what you just said, with the right kind of sake. You have to use the right kind of sake to really show it off to its best ability. And you know what we're talking about, right?
I think I have an idea. I think we're going to be talking about the G word. And not Genjo, the other sake G word. Genshu.
Genshu, yes.
Genshu.
So, John, remind the good folks at home what Genshu is.
So, Genshu means, in spirits world, we would call it cask strength, I think, where you're not adding any water to dilute it. Now, in the sake world, Genshu doesn't necessarily mean it's high alcohol. It doesn't always mean that, because you can always brew your sake to a point where you're just getting it at 15-16% the way it is straight out of the press. But it can also be significantly higher. And I think that we're looking at the ones that are a bit higher. I think that the higher alcohol is what's going to lend itself to the ice. And it's going to have that same effect of having like your good scotch or your good rum with a little bit of ice in it.
Right. Well, I'm not a scotch or rum drinker, so I'm going to have to take your word on that last part.
That was lovely.
But you are absolutely right. So Genshu is our style of sake that generally has no additional water added to it at the time of bottling, full strength, as you said. And I would say if you took a survey of all the Genshus on the market, you'd probably end up around 18% as an average or so. And that's pretty high to drink straight in the glass. So it really does lend itself, if you're interested in it, to putting sake on the rocks or over ice. And what are the advantages of doing that? So one of those advantages is that you keep the sake nice and cold over ice. And that is going to maintain that temperature. And the other advantage is, obviously, as that ice slowly melts, you're going to dilute your sake just a little bit and bring that alcohol level down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and those two things together, in my opinion, can create a very pleasing effect with the right kind of sake.
Yeah, I think going back to the whiskey connection, that same effect is kind of what occurs there, where you're number one, you're bringing that temperature down, and number two, you are diluting it a little bit. Or they say it opens up when you add a little water or a little bit ice, and I think that it proves out in those other types of alcohol. And my limited experiments doing this with sake, I've definitely seen it have a similar effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to have a big butt here, right? Can we talk about my big butt?
And you cannot lie.
My big butt is that I think the type of ice you use is really important.
Interesting. Type of ice.
I have a confession to make, John. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a certified card-carrying ice snob.
You are... I can attest that you are an ice snob. You are probably the only ice snob that I am aware that I know. However, maybe after people hear this, they'll start coming out of the woodwork and they'll be like, you know what? I am also an ice snob.
I mean, given my personality, it would be impossible to imagine that I would have strong feelings about ice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Okay. So what is an ice snob?
Yeah, Tim, what is an ice snob?
Well, I actually make my own ice at home, but everyone does that. But I make clear ice at home, like cocktail quality clear ice at home. Scott calls it my ice factory.
Your ice factory.
The ice factory. So I've commandeered a section of our freezer that I use for making clear ice at home. And I think it makes a huge difference. And when I put expensive sake on the rocks, I use this clear ice.
Interesting. So you use this clear ice. So, for the rest of us plebes at home, what exactly do you do to make clear ice? What's the process look like?
Well, for all the future ice snobs out there who are listening today, yourself included, John, I'd be happy to talk about how to make clear ice. First of all, if you want to cut to the chase, go to sakerevolution.com. And in the show notes, I've put a link to a YouTube video that shows this process very precisely, but I'll give it a quick explainer here. To make clear ice at home, you need to use what's known as directional freezing, which means you want the ice to freeze in one direction from the top down. So to do that, you get a container that is insulated on all sides except it's open at the top. And what I use in my freezer...
Ice tray.
Well, no, what I use in my freezer is a small 6-pack igloo cooler. Those little totes with they're insulated and you bring them to the beach and, it has a lid that flips up. Well, you want to take the lid off and then you have something that's insulated on all sides except the top. You fill it with filtered water. You place it in your freezer and then it starts to freeze, but the only place that it starts to freeze from is the top, and then it starts to freeze from the top down. And as it does that, it pushes all the gas and impurities in the water towards the bottom while it's still liquid. And then if you take it out before it freezes solid, you get a block of clear ice at the top. And the impurities and gas are trapped in the liquid that is at the bottom. If it freezes solid, you're going to get a block of ice that's clear on the top and cloudy on the bottom. You can just chop that off or melt that off, and then you have a block of clear ice to work with. And then you take a serrated bread knife and you start to saw at it and tap it, and you can cut it into cubes any size you want. So that's the the ice factory that Scott was talking about. So on a Sunday afternoon, I'm like sawing my ice block with it.
So what you're telling me is that being an ice snob involves sawing ice.
It involves sawing ice, and I set a timer for myself so I know that in exactly 24 hours I want to go to the freezer and take out my cooler, and you have to grab it before it freezes solid. And there's no going back once you...
There's some serious timing going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you commit to crystal clear ice, and even for my iced coffee every morning, it's these homemade ice cubes that I use, and there's just no going back.
And I believe we have talked on the show about your ice coffee thing as well. That regardless of what time it is February, and regardless of my jokes about how warm it's been, I understand that you have been having iced coffee steadily throughout this entire month.
It's true. I drink iced coffee every day. Yes, and that also feeds my ice snobbery for sure.
Oh, all right.
Check out the show notes, John. You too.
Can I, as a non ice snob, will I still have a positive experience by putting ice cubes in my sake?
Is that the man on the street point of view? Yeah, no, absolutely. You don't need designer clear ice cubes to enjoy sake on the rocks. I think the bigger the ice cube, the better, because it melts a little more slowly.
Right. That makes sense.
But if you have a little bit of cloudiness in there, it's not the end of the world. For me, it's a hobby, and it's a lot of fun to make this ice. And it's something that just, I don't know, I got in the habit of doing it, keeps me entertained, and I really like it. So
clearly you got the bug.
Clearly, wah, wah.
I have only heard, everybody listening at home, I've only heard Tim speak this passionately about two things: sake and ice cubes. And one of them he made a career out of.
I've been waiting 3 years for this episode. My two passions come together.
This whole show has been a ruse. It's been a long con so he can try to sell us all on ice cubes.
Yes, it's been a slow burn these last 2.5 years.
You're a very patient man, Tim.
No, I am passionate about ice cubes, but that is definitely a minor hobby. But it does shine the spotlight on the importance of good quality ice for this episode, for
Excellent.
sure.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, John, you've been to a cocktail bar and had the designer clear ice before, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, in New York, it's a little bit rarer, but in Japan, everybody's got that. It's like everywhere you go, they're just like this like giant block of clear ice, and they're just chiseling off pieces of it to put into your water. Like your water has that. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to get here. And I imagine if I wanted to get like a block of that, it would probably be a little expensive.
Yeah, but you can DIY it at home.
Clearly.
In Japan, I've seen them actually take the ice cubes and carve them by hand into a diamond shape and put that in your whiskey glass.
That sounds like fun.
It's over the top.
I don't think there's a problem with that.
No, it's amazing. I just don't think, even with my love of clear ice, I don't think I'm going to be carving diamond shapes out of my cubes.
So we talked about having genshu sake with your craft ice or regular ice if you're not so inclined to get the craft ice. Today though, what sake are we going to be using for this event?
Can I throw in one other thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, John. So we talked about the pros of putting ice on the rocks, keeping it cold, bringing the alcohol down a little touch for the ginjo. We talked about making, super clear ice if you want to be really extra like I am. But what are the dangers of putting sake on ice? Like, what are the cons?
Well, you could water it down a little too much, maybe. That's my thought. My initial thought was like maybe too much ice. You're going to lose something on that sake. And also, you don't want to get too cold.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ha-ha.
Yeah. Have you ever had like a sip of Coke at the end, at the bottom, and it's like the Coke flavor is all watered out?
Yes.
Too much ice has melted. And you take a sip and it's like, oh, it tastes like half soda. And that is not pleasant with sake either. So you're right. Diluting it too much, letting the ice melt too much. And if you're having the wrong kind of sake over ice, like something that's aromatic or, really ricey in flavor, keeping it ice cold is going to stunt that full-bodied aroma or full-bodied flavor. So you really want to make sure you pick the right kind of sake if you're going to go with on the rocks.
All right. Well, you have explained that it's very important that we pick the right sake for this. And we mentioned earlier the right sake is often a high alcohol genshu. So what did you select for today's little experiment?
I thought we could dip back into the Sake Revolution archives.
Oh.
And I was reviewing some of the sakes we featured in the past. And in episode 22, which was our first Married to Sake episode, we had your better half, Michelle, on the show. And she brought one of her favorite sakes. And I thought it would be great to bring that back. I mean, what better recommendation can we have than Michelle liking it? So I picked up the Naruto Tai Ginjo Shiboritate Nama Genshu.
Yes, that is a favorite in this household for sure.
Yes.
And the nice thing about having something like that is it's not that hard to get in our home.
And I pulled a quote from the episode from Michelle regarding the sake. She said, quote, "I like everything about it," unquote.
Well, as somebody who's seen her enjoy the sake many times, I think that is accurate. She does like everything about it. She's a big fan.
Okay, well, for the people out there who have not listened to episode 22 yet, John, do you want to give us the rundown on the stats for this Naruto Tai?
I would love to. So, the Naruto Tai Ginjo Shiboritate Nama Genshu, say that 3 times fast, is from Honke Matsura Shuzo. And the brand, of course, is Naruto Tai. The alcohol percentage, here we go, 18.5. That's going to be...
That's up there.
Right in that ice range. It's beautiful for ice. Classification, of course, is a Genshu. It is a Ginjo, which means it is outer 10, so alcohol added. It is a Nama, so it's unpasteurized. Now, this is from Tokushima Prefecture, and the sake meter value, that measure of dryness to sweetness, is +5, which is very interesting when you consider what the sake tastes like. And the acidity is 1.7. The rice is milled down to 58% of its original size, and the yeast is Kyokai number 9. So that's association yeast number 9. And this is a fun sake.
All right. Well, let's get our glasses and our ice and our sake.
All right. I'll let you get your special ice. I'll get my normal ice. All right. So people at home, when I just saw Tim come and lean over and grab his ice and come back, and his ice is impeccably clear. Actually, I've never felt self-conscious about my ice before, but my ice is like completely opaque. It is it is like white. And I've never felt shamed for my inferior ice before, but here we are.
John, there's another way.
There is apparently another way. It just takes a lot of effort, time, and bread knives.
And interest in ice.
I guess. So we've got our glasses, we've got our ice, we've got our Naruto Tai Ginjo Shiboritate Nama Genshu. Now this sake is one that if you see on the shelf, you will definitely recognize, because it is one of the only sakes that comes in an aluminum can.
Yes. Check out the show notes to see the picture, but it is a striking can. And of course, this is an unpasteurized sake, so we want to protect it from light. And to do that, they've bottled this in an aluminum can, and it is very striking. Naruto Tai refers to the red snapper that is on the logo, part of their brand name. And this area where the ocean meets the Japanese waters closer to the island causes whirlpools. And the fish that swim in those whirlpools are really strong. And that's where the brand name comes from. So, yeah, the bottle, the packaging is really fantastic and well worth checking out.
Excellent. Strong like the sake.
Strong like the sake. Yes. I love it. Yes. All right. So we're going to pour 2 glasses for ourselves. One with ice on the rocks.
Yes. And one into our traditional Sake Revolution official wine glass.
All right. Let's do it. Here we go.
Now, Tim, this is 18.5%, so we got to be a little careful on the pours.
I'm going to let the ice do all the work.
Okay.
So first of all, let me give our listeners a little listen to the ice in the glass, because for me, that is part of the experience. So, do you hear that? That is crystal clear ice.
Your ice also sounds better than mine.
All right. Well, I think that maybe we should taste the on the rocks first.
Okay.
And I'm giving it a swirl, giving my large whiskey-sized cube swirl in the glass. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should start by giving it a smell. So I have it on the rocks.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm having mine out of a rocks glass. I felt that would be appropriate for having the sake on the rocks. And I feel like it is definitely not harnessing that aroma, but it's there. But I feel like I'm missing a little. I feel like I'm not getting as much as I want to be.
Yeah, I'm using a double old-fashioned glass as well, and I'm able to get some aroma.
It's definitely a little bit.
I went back and listened to our comments from episode 22, and I said back then that I smelled something jammy, kind of concentrated fruit, and I also smelled a little bit of alcohol, ethanol aroma.
Right.
I'd say that still holds true.
I'm going to say that, as I mentioned earlier, the aroma is a bit faint for me. I think that the ice is kind of making it even fainter. But I do feel there is a bit of a sweetness there. There's a bit of almost a little sweetness, a little bit of riciness, tiny bit. Not getting any of the alcohol smell, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I still get that jammy smell, like a little bit of apricot jam or something like that. Concentrated bit of sweetness. So should we try it on the rocks?
Let's try it on the rocks.
Okay.
Oh, man.
That's good.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever had this sake on the rocks before. I've had this sake many, many times.
Straight up.
Straight up, yes. And this is like lovely. It is so, this is refreshing.
Yes. So it's going to keep it nice and chilly willy, nice and cold. And again, bring that alcohol level down just a smidge. I mean, it still tastes rich and full-bodied and brassy as ever, right? Mm-hmm. But it just softens the edge a little bit to that sharper alcohol that can come through when you have this much booze in a sake.
Yeah.
So we have the non-iced version. I have it in my wine glass. Mm-hmm. Should we give that a smell and see if we have any big difference? I'm going to give a swirl.
See here with the swirl and the smell.
It's
so much more aroma. It is pow.
Yeah, the aroma is heightened. You're absolutely right.
And that boozy smell is there as well.
Okay.
Wow. It is so much more concentrated and
boom,
heavy and just big. Like I mentioned earlier, on the rocks, it was very refreshing, almost light. I mean, the body was still there and the flavors are still there, but they're all just very relaxed, subdued. And coming out of the wine glass, it is just, hello, how you doing? It is it is kicking the door down. It is this is an intense and big flavored sake. and you get that 100% out of the wine glass. And when we switch over to the rocks, it is just so much more of a sippable, just relaxing sippable sake. It goes from being a, have some of this with your dinner sake to something that John can sit on the couch and sip.
Coming out of the wine glass, it's brassy, it's strong. It's a little smack in the face, It's like boom. And the ice, it's a combination of the temperature and the dilution, just softens it. And I have to say that when I sip it out of the wine glass, I have this aftertaste of, there's a little heat there. There's from the higher alcohol, I don't want to say burn or anything unpleasant, but there's a noticeable aftertaste of that indicates the strength of the sake, the full 18.5%, 19% alcohol.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it is prominent from the wine glass with no ice. And on the rocks version, as you said, was softer, more gentle sipping. And it's just a combo of that dilution and that chill that makes it really pleasant.
It's funny. I said I'd never had this on the rocks before.
So good.
I'm going to be having this on the rocks a lot more often. This is very, very eye-opening for me. I think the only sakes I've had on the rocks before were probably from Tamagawa.
Yeah.
But it is such a great experience having the Rutotai on the rocks. It's really nice. I don't know how I've never done this before. I've been in a room with a lot of Narutotai in my life. This reminds me, Tim, we've had situations on the show before where we've tried different sakes out of different vessels primarily and had this really great alternative experiences with the sakes. And this reminds me so much of that. It's just having this really, really nice twist on a favorite that I already have.
Yeah, I think that it's been really eye-opening for me. I've had sake on the rocks. I've had this sake on the rocks before, but never side by side the same sake on the rocks and not. So this is an absolute first for me.
Really? All
yeah.
Right.
You mentioned Tamagawa as another sake that you could put on the rocks. I also wanted to mention Kikusui Funaguchi.
Yes, that is an excellent idea.
Yeah, that's another sake in a can.
Yes. Who knew? The canned sakes go really well with ice. And I think that's just a function of they're putting these heavier flavored, these genshus in these cans, and boom.
Yeah, so there's a few brands you can experiment with if you want to try sake on the rocks for yourself. And you can, of course, check our show notes if you want to be extra and make the clear ice like I did.
The clear ice maker coming from urbansake.com.
There's
some places
no going back.
There's no going back.
All right. Well, this was fascinating. I really enjoyed trying this Narutotai Genshu on the rocks. So interesting. I would have never thunk it, but here we are.
Yeah. And a successful little experiment, I think.
Awesome. Well, John, so great to taste with you. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome, Tim.
Yep. So I want to thank all of our listeners, but especially a hello and thank you to our patrons. If you're a regular listener and you would like to support our show, the best way to do that is to join our community on Patreon. For a small monthly donation, you can support us and help us bring you a wonderful sake episode each and every week.
And did you know that if you go to sakerevolution.com, you can also find swag? You can find a link to our store. We've got t-shirts, we've got stickers, we've got other little things here and there that you can either get for yourself or for the Sake Revolution fan in your life.
And be sure to check out our show notes. As we mentioned a few times in this episode, visit sakerevolution.com to see the show notes, get all the links to the sakes mentioned in this episode, and we also have a written transcript for you to read. So please check us out online.
Yes. And you can also learn how to make clear ice the Tim Sullivan way.
The only way.
The only way. So, without any further ado, please grab a glass. Remember to keep drinking sake on the rocks. and
Kanpai.